Şimdi İngiltere merkezli dijital bir ajans olan Ayra'nın operasyon direktörü Matthew Kay'i ağırlayacağız. We are hosting Matthew Kay at Digital Zone Stage.
Good afternoon, everyone. First of all, I'd like to thank Digital Zone and Zio Agency for inviting us out here, particularly to Istanbul. Beautiful place. Looking forward to exploring the city over the next sort of couple of days. Today, I'm going to be talking basically a little bit about how our keyword research process is probably fundamentally broken. And realistically, we need to be evolving what we're doing to start creating content that is matching our buyer's journey or our potential buyer's journey. In terms of who I am, my name is Matthew. My contact details are up on the screen there if you want to get hold of me after the event. I work for a... Hopefully it'll come through. So I work for a digital marketing agency called Era. Era are a Google Premier partner, one of about 50 Moz recommended agencies and a certified HubSpot partner. The agency was founded by two guys who you may know. They pop around on the speaking circuit as well from time to time. Matt Beswick and Paddy Mugan about 4 years ago. One of them, Paddy Mugan, actually wrote this book. This is the link building book. It's available to buy online. Paddy's quite a friendly bloke, but he actually threatened to fire me if I didn't promote this book. So if anyone would like to go out there and purchase it, I'm sure I definitely appreciate that, so I can stay in my job for a little bit longer. In terms of what I'm going to talk about today, I'm going to try and show you how you can do this. Okay, so going from relatively minimal traffic volumes and basically accelerating them over time by creating content that is matching the journey of your potential buyer. But first, I want to talk about a story, something that most of you are going to be familiar about. Fundamentally, over the last sort of 15, 20 years or so, consumers have changed. 20 years ago, this is roughly what the sales or the process for acquiring a new customer looked like. Okay, so before the internet, you might receive a sales call, or you might go to see a newspaper advertisement. You then might get a brochure from the organisation, or you might get a little bit more information from the person who picked up the phone, and then you'd end up submitting an inquiry or purchasing the product. Okay, and this is a little bit of an oversimplification. But today's consumer, today's journey is much more complex, okay? And what we tend to find now is that people are having many more touch points. Because of the creation of the internet, people are going to Google, they are going to social media, they're subscribing to newsletters, they're revisiting websites on multiple occasions, they're going to review websites. They're doing lots of things before they actually submit that inquiry. And it's all very well and good me saying this, but a lot of the data out there actually backs this up. So in a state of procurement study, 94% of B2B buyers research online before making purchase decisions. In a demand gen report, 47% of buyers viewed 3 to 5 pieces of content before engaging with a sales rep. And then a really interesting one from Google is that one user's car buying journey included over 900 digital interactions, digital touch points across a 3-month period. Okay? I know what you're thinking, this is boring, right? We know this stuff, get to the point, and I understand that. But we need to start thinking about what does this actually mean? Well, it means that the buyer's journey has evolved. And some of you may have seen similar variations, but I just want to quickly kind of define what the buyer's journey actually is. The buyer's journey, and there's lots and lots of iterations of this, and this is something that at least we use at Era, is this 3-stage process. And you go through this process, and it doesn't matter what you buy, of awareness, consideration, and decision. Okay? In the awareness stage, your potential consumer has started to experience problems or is having symptoms of an opportunity, but they actually don't know what that is yet. In the consideration stage, a customer has actually defined what that particular problem is and is starting to research potential solutions. And then in the decision stage, The buyer has actually evaluated all of those potential solutions and is now looking at vendors. It's looking at comparison, it's looking at pricing, it's looking at all that sort of stuff. So let's take an actual example. A social media platform that most people in the room are probably familiar with is Hootsuite. I have absolutely zero affiliation with these guys. But this is the sort of thought process and content generation that we should actually be thinking about, because in the awareness stage, people are thinking, they're not thinking, I need a social media management tool, I need something to post out on Facebook and Twitter and all that sort of stuff. They're thinking, well, my website isn't generating enough traffic. In the consideration stage, they're potentially thinking, well, do I need any social media management software? In the decision stage, it's then coming to this process of, well, which social media management software should I choose? So what we need to start thinking about is aligning our content to the thought process of that potential buyer. So if my website isn't generating enough traffic, I create an article that says 5 ways to generate website traffic from social media. Okay, very aligned to my potential product, but it's actually tailored to that particular buyer's journey. In the consideration stage, do I need social media management software? Well, maybe we conduct an analysis. Maybe it's a white paper, maybe it's an ebook, maybe it's a blog article of social media management versus the native platforms. What's the pros and cons? And then in the decision stage, maybe we're actually comparing products. So Hootsuite versus Buffer versus Sprout Social versus Sendable. Quite often, organizations are guilty of focusing too much at the decision stage, okay? And they're missing out on all these people who are just researching, who are just looking for information a little bit earlier on in their buyer's journey. And we forget about these consumers who are just not ready to buy. So here's another really, really interesting stat. 96% of website visitors are not ready to buy. Okay? That means 4 out of every 100 people that visit our website are in the decision stage. Okay? 96%? That's huge. What does this actually mean, though? Well, it means that our keyword research and our content creation process needs to cater for those users much further up the funnel, much further in their decision, much further up the decision-making process. They're not thinking about buying your service or your product just yet. And once they do come onto your website, this stuff starts coming into play. Lead capture, so capturing email addresses. Email and marketing automation once you've got that email address, or retargeting. Okay? Now, big warning. If you have limited time and resource, you should absolutely focus on the decision stage content. Okay? Because these people are ready to buy, right? But we want to make sure that we're not necessarily ignoring all of those people in the awareness and the consideration stage. So how should our process for getting found online, for getting found through search engines actually change? Well, this is where moving from keywords to topics comes in. And again, I know most people in the room will understand that, you know, this isn't particularly new, okay? We all, in fact, know this. There's a really, really good article by Cyrus Shepherd on the Moz blog, which is from nearly 4 years ago, about topic targeting. And just to very, very quickly run over this kind of shift from keywords to topic, within this article, it talks about how you might have a particular keyword phrase, but then within that particular article, you should be mentioning variations and synonyms of that terms, but also related terms, okay? So, for example, if your keyword might be targeting the White House, then mentioning phrases like President Washington, all this sort of stuff should actually aid you getting found within the search results pages. What we've tried to do at Era is evolve HubSpot's topic cluster model, and I'll talk a little bit about what this is in a sec. And the topic cluster model is, in turn, kind of this evolution of a hub and spoke content approach, okay? And this has been around, again, for a number of years. But the way that HubSpot's topic cluster model works is that you create a piece of pillar content which is really, really in depth across a wide variety, across a whole topic. And then you create what they call cluster content or cluster pages, which are all on your site and potentially off-site, but with internal links pointing back to that pillar page. but not only internal links pointing back to that pillar page, potentially you want to be linking between the cluster pages. And the idea of this process is that your core topic sits on that main pillar page, and then you have your subtopics or your longer tail keywords sitting around the outside. And if you get to link to one of those pages, the whole topic cluster should get a boost. Now, pillar content often tends to be awareness or consideration stage content, not always, but most of the time. So what we try to do within our process is add decision stage content, which we've termed target pages. Okay? What we then try to do is we want to look at the relationships between keywords to try and reduce cannibalization. What does that actually mean? Well, it means that often one page, as you guys will know, will rank for multiple keywords with fundamentally similar intent. So our old approach might be that we would have lots of separate pages for pretty much every single keyword or phrase that we're trying to target, whereas our new approach, you might have multiple keywords targeted into one particular page. So we want to start putting this all into practice. And the early stages of our keyword research process probably shouldn't alter all of that much. We want to gather the seed keywords, okay? So we want to gather a list of, depending on how many topics or how many products or how many services you offer, a number of phrases that you want to be found for, and you could do this through the sort of regular ways that you do. You'd be doing it yourself, you'd be coming up with brainstorming sessions with colleagues, you'd be asking potential customers what they might search for if they were looking for your product, and also the client themselves or your in-house teams. What we then do is you wanted to put them into relevant tools. There's a wide variety of tools out there. Moz, SEMrush, Ahrefs, all these sorts of tools which will then aid you to expand that seed keyword list. Okay? So expanding that list out into a much larger pool. So, and this is, again, a bit of an oversimplification, but your previous keyword list might end up looking something like this. Okay? So you then have lots and lots of keywords. You then want to export that data into Excel or Google Sheets. Now, some of those tools, you'll have to do that manually. Ideally, you want to automate as much of this process as possible. Dave Sottomano's got a really, really good guide for exporting SEMrush keywords into Google Sheets, so it'd be worth checking that out. But you want to try and automate some of this process. But if you don't have the ability to work with APIs or depending on your tool, you're not able to actually create this automated, then obviously you can just export the data. Once you've got that data exported, you then want to start breaking those keywords out into topics. So previously we had that big list. Now we want to start categorizing them, okay? So we've got all of our keywords, and we're also putting it that we had previously on that slide, and then we're putting it into a social media topic. We then want to be thinking about putting it into the another topic. So in this example, might be inbound marketing. And then another one, maybe like a link building topic, okay? So what we're doing is we're making sure that we are putting all of our associated keywords in with relevant topics. The next stage in the process is, again, similar to what you normally would do, ignoring keywords based off search volume and relevance, okay? So you might end up with a bunch of keywords, in this example, where we're just ignoring, basing off the fact that we can't find applicable search volume. There's no point in trying to rank for a particular phrase if people aren't really searching for it, okay? What we also try to do in this particular sheet, we try to pull in keywords from various places. So it might be Google AdWords, might be using Moz. We don't tend to use more than 2 or 3 sources because we don't want to kind of convolute things. We're obviously using data from multiple sources to try and make our judgments as to whether or not a keyword is appropriate to go for. Once we've ignored those keywords, now we want to start integrating what I was talking about previously with the buyer's journey and topic clusters. So people are out of habit and out of the way that you search for things online, tend to use similar phrases at each stage of the journey. And this isn't black and white, this isn't a hard and fast rule. But these are the sort of phrases that people might use at certain stages. So in the awareness stage, it's things like how-tos, resolve, troubleshoot, improve, optimize. In the consideration stage, that's when they're starting to look for solutions. So solutions providers, suppliers, software, that sort of thing. And then in the decision stage, this is where things like compare, versus, pros and cons, price, cost, that sort of stuff might start to come through. So let's start to build this out with our link building topic. So this is our list of keywords, and there might be many more than this. But we then want to start mapping these to the buyer's journey. So when we look at some of these keywords on here, people who are looking to get high Google ranking, then they are kind of at the very, very early stage of their process. They know that they want to appear higher on Google, but they're not actually sure about how to do it. They probably might not even know what SEO is or what the acronym stands for. So we bucket them into the awareness stage. People that have then done that research and have probably found out that actually link building is a potential way for you to get higher rankings in Google, okay? We bucket them into the consideration stage. And then when people are actually starting to look for companies and providers and services and doing these comparisons and analysis and all that sort of stuff, that's when they go into the decision stage. And what you find with a lot of organizations, like I mentioned earlier, is that they're very much focused on that decision stage. They're not focusing on the awareness and the consideration. I should emphasize that this is just a small data set. In this particular example, we had over 180 keywords for one topic, and this didn't include all of the keywords that we'd actually left in the tools and ignored and not filtered down. And you're going to end up having multiple topics. But one of the key things to note is that this process is never really an exact science. People who are typing in link building might actually be in the decision stage. It's sometimes difficult to tell with this sort of thing because it would depend on the particular intent of that user. So we want to ensure that we are serving various types of content for people so that when they do come to the website, it's still going to be there and prevalent for them because they might just be looking for that information. So when we're doing this process, quite often we're actually looking at the search engine results pages for help. In this particular example, when I've typed in link building, you can see on my search, and yours might be quite different depending on your history, that this is quite a consideration stage query, okay? What Google is actually showing back to me is some information about link building. It's not showing me any services, okay? Whereas in this particular example, say I was looking for floor tiles, this seems to be a little bit more of a decision stage-based query based off the data that Google's got. And the reason why we use Google for this sort of thing is because obviously they've got layers upon layers of information, and they're tracking all of the things that we're doing in terms of what pages we're viewing, how long we're staying on sites, whether we're pogo sticking, going back onto the search results pages, and looking for other queries. So they've refined this over a period of time. So using the actual SERPs themselves is really, really influential to help us define what stage of the buyer's journey this particular keyword might be in. Might not always help, but you've got to use some of your own judgment and obviously a lot of that data that you have available to make those decisions. If we jump back to this particular slide, this can be really, really helpful for you with some of those, particularly when you see the words like price and cost and things like that. You can pretty much immediately bucket those into the decision stage. It might also be helpful for you to actually spend some time building out your own list in addition to this sort of thing, because you'll probably start to see certain phrases, certain terms appear in these stages of the buyer's journey, you know, for your particular industry. So in terms of some of these keywords, like I mentioned, they do map to them, and that's what I was mentioning previously. In terms of when you've got all those key phrases defined, and what we then start to do is analyze these keywords in terms of some of the other data that we have available to pick the most appropriate phrases for our particular client, or in your cases, potentially your organization. And what we're looking at is a combination of these three things, okay? So we're looking at keyword volume, the potential to rank, and the importance of the keyword to the business. So the top two, you'll get from tools. You'll get that information from Moz, you'll get those from AdWords Keyword Planner, you'll get that information from SEMrush, all that sort of thing. Whereas you really need input from the business here, because a certain keyword that might be easy to rank for with lots of search volume might not be overly important to the business for profitability reasons or for the amount of effort it's required for someone to actually become a customer. So it's really, really key that when we're evaluating this process, and it's quite subjective, is to look at a combination of all of these things. I'd advocate that you not forget to include Google Ads data or Bing Ads data in this process. In theory, keywords that convert well on PPC should do the same organically. If people are searching for those particular terms, and you've got all of that data within your Google Ads account. So try and combine the data sets to give you the ability to judge those particular keywords and those particular phrases. Will Reynolds talks about this a lot. I've put a link to one particular talk, but there's several talks online that you'll be able to find of Will talking about how you really should be trying to integrate your PPC, your ads data, in with your keyword research process to help you start to define which keywords are most likely to convert. When we pick these keywords, we start to look at how relative these terms are to each other. So we have a primary keyword, or a couple of primary keywords, and then secondary keywords for related terms. Okay? So in this particular example, in the olden days, we might have had several pages for each of those. Okay? Nowadays, we're only having one page for each of these particular terms. What this helps us to do is it helps us with our keyword mapping and targeting and creation of pages at a later date. So once you've gone through this sort of process, and this is our spreadsheet, and it's a bit color-coded to help us kind of define this stuff and when we send it across to clients, but you might end up with something looking a little bit like this, okay? So we're starting to map out these particular keywords to a particular type of content. In this example, link building is going to be our pillar page, okay? It's got lots of information about, it's going to be a broad cover of the whole topic. But there's obviously lots of sub-phrases in there that people might be searching as well, that chances are that particular page is going to, or is quite likely to appear for. And then we've got some additional pages underneath where we're starting to map out what the cluster content is, okay? What our supplementary content is that's going to internally link back to our pillar page. And here's another example for social media, again. So, and in this one here, we've actually pulled out a particular decision stage piece of content where someone might be typing social media consultation. They're actually looking for a social media company to come in and consult for them, okay? So we go through this process to try and ensure that we are, when we get to our content creation and mapping keywords to pages on our site, that we've got a really, really clear overview for the content writer in terms of what they should be creating. So when we go into this process, we might end up with something a little bit like this, okay? So we try to map these keywords to existing content. There's no point in going away and creating content for stuff you've already got on your site. So these are examples from Aira's website. We've gone through this process for ourselves, whereby we're saying, actually, we've already got pages that are in existence that could potentially already rank for these terms, and if not, are already ranking for these terms. Okay? This helps us essentially create our own content gap analysis. So now we're able to say, right, these keywords are already performing quite well on our site, or we already have this content that can potentially rank. So now we've got a content plan for the next potentially 3, 6, 9, even 12 months, depending on how many keywords you've actually gone through. And this is how this ends up looking like, okay? So just some indicative examples. So we've got social media leads. We didn't have a page on our site in existence, so then we're going to go away and create a content which might be how to generate leads from social media, okay? And we're targeting multiple phrases for the same page. Remember, make sure you're using the SERPs to help match your buyer's journey. It's really, really difficult to completely understand exactly the intent, but the SERPs are definitely a guide. Okay, so the reason why we've gone with social media leads for the consideration stage is because when we've gone out and done the search and actually had a look at it, it's telling us that this is an informational query. So our content recommendation is actually reflecting this. So I've spoken a lot now about the implementation and why you should, or how you actually go about doing this, but I suppose the question on everyone's lips is, does this actually work? Well, from HubSpot's perspective, they started experimenting with this in 2016. And through their analysis that they conducted, they reported clicks from SERPs for one particular keyword over 1,500%, and organic sessions increase of 13% week on week over the study. Okay, so moving from this kind of older approach into this topic cluster model, they have seen a significant improvement in the amount of traffic visiting their site. I want to take a couple of real-world examples as well, because HubSpot can talk about it, but we should be talking about how we're actually applying this for clients. So we've been working on building out some pillar pages for our clients, tailored to the buyer's journey for around about 5 months now. And these are the effects that it's currently happening. This is only 3 sort of pages as it stands at the moment, but we're actually targeting over 100 of these pillar pages by Christmas. And obviously it takes a little bit of time for these pages to get indexed and all that sort of stuff, and to create the cluster content that's internally linking towards it. But the early signs for this particular client are really good. Additionally, an added benefit of this process is that because we're going really, really in depth on particular topics, we're starting to get some featured snippets for some of these clients as well. So instead of trying to rank for position 1, 2, 3, we're actually ending up in what's being deemed position 0. And there's multiple examples of this for this particular client. We have an expression in the UK, which is we don't want to be being a plumber with leaky taps. And so what we've started to do is actually try to roll this process out for ourselves. So agencies, I think historically are, not all of them, but sometimes can be a bit bad for actually practicing what they preach. So we're really trying to make a concerted effort to do that. And we've only really been doing this, we did start our keyword research in sort of July time, and we started rolling out content. And our ranking distribution for the first topic that we've tried this on, which is inbound marketing, is getting stronger. Okay, so we're generating more traffic, we're getting better rankings across the board for this particular topic. I'm hoping to have some more data in sort of 6 to 12 months' time to show the continued improvement of this as we add more keywords, more topics, and more blog content. But it shows that this stuff in the real world is definitely working by following this particular approach and this model. And what we'll then do is we will track the performance of our topic cluster against the number of leads and customers that it's generating. So it's really, really crucial to find a way that you can take this particular approach and actually analyze the data afterwards, so that you can say, well, might be driving loads of traffic, but is it generating any leads? Might be generating leads, but are they actually turning into customers? So it's hugely important that we're actually putting this analysis or putting the data, putting the tools there that gives us the ability to actually analyze and say whether or not this stuff works going forward. So I wanted to finish up with a few takeaways. I think fundamental problem is that we spend, as marketers, so much time on the decision stage of the buyer's journey. All of our focus tends to be very much on looking at those consumers who are ready to buy now. But if we think back to that HubSpot statistic, only 4 out of every 100 people are there. So why is 80, 90% of our content targeted towards those people? Okay? We really want to be creating content fundamentally based off data and insight that is catering for consumers much earlier in their purchase journey. Those how-to articles, those optimized articles. We want to be using keyword mapping to identify these content gaps, okay? Ensuring that we are using our keyword research process to help inform the current content that we've already got, because it's much more difficult to create new content than it is to repurpose or mess around with existing content. So we want to use keyword mapping to ensure that we've targeted the right key phrases in existence for our existing content, and we're identifying those content gaps. We also want to be categorizing that content into these topics and then the pillar and the cluster pages, okay? Because by doing so, it enables you to say, right, this particular article needs to be a really long-form piece of content. Okay, this particular article can be a bit of a lighter touch on this particular subject area. We want to be tracking our results within the relevant topic clusters. Okay, very, very important to make sure that we are understanding how much of a difference this is impacting us. And once they're on our website, make sure that you are retargeting these people who are a little bit earlier in the buyer's journey, okay? Or using other methods like lead capture, email capture, that sort of stuff, to then push them to the next stage. Because people might just visit your website, get the information, and then leave, okay? We really want to make sure that we're actually trying to help them get to the next stage of the buyer's journey. So if you create that awareness, consideration, and decision stage content, if they see an awareness article, you might want to use social media retargeting, okay? Or remarketing lists for search ads to bring people back to the website when they're searching for phrases a little bit further along in their purchase journey to help nurture them into customers. And that's all from me. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Especially the example part was really impressive for me. So I will check your slides again after the presentation. So we have one question for you, actually. So some of our attendees just want me to ask you that, which are your best keyword research tools? Because you just told us very nice strategies, but what are your sources actually?
Sure. So we use, at the moment, Moz, obviously. So we're a Moz recommended agency, and the tool's a great tool, particularly if you, so within Keyword Explorer, it has the ability to filter down on certain keywords. So some of the things that you can do is filter down into asking queries that are questions, and often questions tend to be awareness or consideration stage content. Yeah, exactly. So Moz is definitely in use. We also use SEMrush and the API, obviously, to pull the data through to kind of automate some of that data collection and data gathering. In terms of, obviously, those tools, to get the most out of them, you have to be on a paid plan. So we also recommend that if people don't have access to all of the data that they want, there's a Chrome extension called Keywords Everywhere. And that Chrome extension has a really good export functionality and basically just uses Google Ads keyword planner data, which is much more difficult to actually get than it used to be. Yeah. So those are the tools that we currently use. In terms of helping map content to the buyer's journey, Searchmetrics has done a reasonable amount of work in their content tool to start mapping it to their to the buyer's journey. So actually, when you input their keywords, it will give out some where it believes that these keywords are in that journey. So so those are the tools I'd recommend people check out.
Great. Thank you so much.
Cool. Thank you.